Can language models replace programmers for coding? Repo Cod says not yet. This is from June 24th, 2025. What these guys did is they came up with their own benchmark. They were deeply unsatisfied with the benchmarks that are typically used by AI benchmarks to determine the quality of code output for AI systems. And so for example, just before I get to the stats, they were unsatisfied that a lot of these benchmarks don't use real-world coding tasks. They were unsatisfied that the tasks in source repositories were not complex, that they lacked dependencies, they were narrowly scoped to singular functions, that the metrics themselves didn't match the real-world scenarios of what people would expect to see out of like actual code generation outputs. So they came up with their own rubric, their own metric system, their own benchmark. And they're like, look, F this, we're going to try and make something far more comprehensive. They took, let's see, what did they do here? They took a repository collection of Python as the primary languages. It needed to have no less than 2,000 stars. As popular repositories tend to be well maintained, they had to have multi-functions, a lot of interdependencies. There would have to be, if I remember correctly, there would have to be what did they call it? Anyway, there would have to be a variation in terms of the types of tasks. So you can't just focus on like one or two types. In real world, when you're programming, you're going to come across different problems, which means that you're going to have different types of code and all of this. So if you read this study, which if you're interested in this, it's a very good one. They really tried hard to make a very comprehensive benchmark. At the very least, it's in my opinion, the best benchmark I've seen so far to test LLMs. Could it be better? Absolutely, it could be better. You could even be more comprehensive than this, but they made it clear right out the gate that they were very unhappy with the current benchmarks. Okay, so all that said, here's what they discovered. To address these challenges, we create RepoCod, a Python code generation benchmark containing complex tasks with realistic dependencies in real-world large projects and appropriate metrics for evaluating source code. It includes 980 whole function generation tasks from 11 popular projects, 50.8% of which require repository-level context. So they even determined that these benchmarks have very narrow context scope. How can you properly determine that the LLM is doing correct work? And so they even went like half of these require you to have the context of the entire repository, all of its dependencies, in order to determine in order to get the LLM to give you good output. RepoCod includes 314 developer-written test cases per instance for better evaluation. Another thing that they noticed about typical benchmarks, they're not written by programmers out in the real world. So they got programmers who are actual programmers who actually have like a real world experience in the industry to write tests for these. They evaluated LLMs on RepoCod and found that none achieve more than 30% maximum. Most sat at 20%. Yeah. So I believe down here, if I search for 20%. Yeah, right here. None of the open sourced LLMs exceeded 20%. Geppetto 4.0 had the best result, reaching 27.4%. Now you could look at this two ways. One of the ways would be, well, 20 to 30% is still better than nothing. Whoever it is that just did the follow there, thank you. I appreciate it. And the other way you can look at it is tens of billions of dollars for absolute maximum 30% on these benchmarks. I don't think that's worth it. You could take those tens of billions of dollars and you could invest it into human beings who are going to be far more creative with their code and their problem solving abilities, and you're going to get much farther with them, and it's going to have far more long-term positive consequences. So again, the amount of money we're putting into these LLM systems for maybe that kind of output for code generation, I just don't see it. I don't see the benefit right now. I don't think it's going to get to the point where it's going to be worth it either.